Commander had seen many things in her life. She had watched planets burn. She had led armies across the dark spaces between stars. She had killed enemies with her own hands and felt nothing but satisfaction. The Empire called her the Iron Blade, and she had earned that name through blood and fire. But nothing had prepared her for this. She stood in the greeting hall of her flagship, watching the small human shuttle dock with her ship. Today was the day her new husband would arrive. A human, a creature from a small blue planet that had only discovered space travel 200 years ago. The Galactic Council had arranged this marriage as part of the peace treaty between Earth and the Empire. Politics, always politics. Second-in-command Lieutenant stood beside her. He was trying very hard not to show his feelings, but knew him too well. He was embarrassed for her. The great commander married to a human. It was almost funny. The shuttle doors opened and saw her husband for the first time. He was smaller than she expected. Humans were known to be roughly the same size as, but this one seemed somehow less. He had soft brown hair that fell across his forehead and dark eyes that looked around the docking bay with wonder, not fear. He wore simple Earth clothes, nothing military or impressive. He carried only one small bag. His name was, she had read his file 3 times, 29 Earth years old. No military service recorded. Occupation listed as cultural liaison, whatever that meant. He saw her and smiled. It was a warm smile, gentle and sincere. He walked toward her and bowed in the way, though his form was not quite right. "Commander," he said, his voice was soft. "I am honored to meet you. I hope I can be a good husband to you." Did not know what to say. She had expected many things. Arrogance, perhaps, fear, certainly. Maybe anger at being traded away like property, but this quiet warmth was not something she had planned for. "Welcome to the," she said stiffly. "Lieutenant will show you to our quarters." That was their first meeting. It did not get better from there. In the weeks that followed, tried to understand her new husband. She failed completely. Was soft. There was no other word for it. He woke up early every morning and made food for her, even though she had never asked. He learned her language with surprising speed and spoke it with a terrible accent that made her crew members laugh behind their hands. He smiled at everyone, even the officers who openly mocked him. He flinched at loud noises. When the ship's weapons systems were tested, found him hiding in their quarters with his hands over his ears. When officers made cruel jokes about humans being weak and primitive, he simply nodded and said nothing. One evening, returned to her quarters after a long day of battle training. She was tired and frustrated. A minor lord from a rival faction had insulted her at a diplomatic meeting, calling her human husband a pet in front of everyone. She had wanted to kill him, but politics prevented such satisfying solutions. She found in the small cooking area, preparing some earth dish that filled the room with strange but pleasant smells. "You heard what Lord said about you today," she said. It was not a question. Nodded, still focusing on his cooking. "Yes, the communication officer told me." "And you have nothing to say, no anger, no desire for revenge." He turned to look at her and his eyes were calm. Not empty, she realized, just peaceful. What would anger change? Lord thinks I am weak because I am human. Many people think this. Getting angry will not change their minds. Then what will? Smiled and returned to his cooking. Time, maybe, or maybe nothing. I cannot control what others think of me. I can only control what I do. Stared at him. In her world, such words would be considered cowardly, weakness, but something in the way he said them made her pause. "The food will be ready soon," he said. "You should rest. You had a difficult day." She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that she did not need his care, his soft words, his strange earth food. But she was tired, and the smell was making her hungry, and somehow she found herself sitting down at the table like a guest in her own quarters. The food was good. She did not tell him this. As more time passed, began to feel something she had not expected. It was not love. She was not sure she was capable of such things anymore, but it was something close to protectiveness. Was so helpless, so gentle, so completely unable to survive in the harsh world of the Empire. Someone needed to watch over him. She told herself this was duty. A commander protects those under her command, even annoying human husbands who smiled too much. But late at night, when was sleeping peacefully beside her, she sometimes found herself watching him. His face in sleep was so calm, so trusting. He had come to a strange ship full of aliens who thought he was worthless, and he had chosen to be kind anyway. There was something almost brave about that, though she would never say it out loud. One night had a nightmare. She woke to find him shaking, his hands gripping the blankets, whispers falling from his lips in his native language. She did not understand the words, but she recognized fear when she heard it. She did something she had never done before. She reached out and touched his shoulder, gently, the way he always touched her when he thought she was stressed. "You are safe," she said quietly. "It was only a dream." His eyes opened, and for one brief moment she saw something in them that she did not recognize. Something dark and old and very, very tired. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual gentle warmth. "Thank you," he whispered. "I am sorry for waking you." "Do not apologize," she said. "Go back to sleep." He smiled at her, that infuriating gentle smile, and closed his eyes. Lay awake for a long time after that, thinking about what she had seen. She told herself it was nothing. Humans were emotional creatures. They had strange dreams and stranger fears. But somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that she was missing something important. That the gentle, helpless man sleeping beside her was not quite what he appeared to be. She ignored that voice. She was a commander, after all. She knew how to read people. She was wrong. 3 months had passed since came aboard the 3 months of quiet mornings, strange Earth food, and a husband who seemed determined to be the softest creature in the entire galaxy. Had almost grown used to it. Almost. It started with small things, things that did not quite make sense. Was clumsy. Everyone knew this. He dropped things, bumped into furniture, and once managed to trip over his own feet in the middle of an empty corridor. The crew found it amusing. The great commander's human pet could not even walk properly. But began to notice something strange. Was only clumsy when people were watching. When he thought he was alone, he moved differently. She caught glimpses of it sometimes, through half-open doors or reflected in dark screens. His steps became silent. His movements became smooth. He walked like a hunter, not a fool. She told herself she was imagining things. Then there was the matter of his hands. Hands were always busy. Cooking, cleaning, tending to the small garden he had built in their quarters. Soft work, gentle work. But when looked closely, she saw calluses on his palms and fingers. Thick, hard calluses that did not come from holding cooking tools. She had seen such calluses before, on soldiers who trained with weapons every day of their lives. She told herself it meant nothing. The night of the first assassination attempt was away from her quarters. A meeting with her senior officers had run late, and she did not return until well past midnight. She expected to find asleep, as he always was at this hour. Instead, she found 3 unconscious bodies in the corridor outside their door. They were dressed in black combat suits with no identifying marks, professional assassins. Each of them had been taken down with precise, efficient strikes. One had a broken arm. Another had been choked unconscious. The third had a bruise on his temple exactly where a pressure point would render someone instantly senseless. Was standing in the doorway, looking down at them with a worried expression. "What happened?" demanded. "I heard noises," said. His voice was shaky, uncertain. "When I opened the door, they attacked me. I think I got lucky. One of them tripped and I managed to push another one, and then—" He looked at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. "I do not really know what happened. It was very confusing." looked at the 3 trained killers lying unconscious at her feet. She looked at her gentle husband, who could not walk across a room without bumping into something. "You got lucky," she repeated. "Yes, very lucky." She did not believe him, but she could not explain what she was seeing, so she said nothing. The investigation that followed revealed nothing useful. The assassins were professionals, hired through untraceable channels. They refused to talk, even under aggressive questioning. Eventually, they were executed according to law, and the matter was officially closed. But could not stop thinking about it. She began watching more carefully, not because she suspected him of anything bad, but because she needed to understand. Who was this man she had married? She pulled his file from the Earth Confederacy database. Most of it was redacted. Black bars covered everything except his name, birth date, and the meaningless phrase cultural liaison. The security clearance required to access the full file was higher than her own, higher than most admirals, higher than anyone she knew. What kind of cultural liaison needed that level of security? Lieutenant came to her, with troubling news on a cold morning in the 4th month of her marriage. "Commander," he said, his voice low and serious, "my sources have confirmed a threat. There is a faction within the Empire that sees your marriage as weakness. They believe that choosing a human husband has made you soft, vulnerable. They are planning to move against you." "A coup?" "Of a sort. They intend to strike at the Unity Summit next month, kill you publicly, blame it on human agents, and use the incident to restart the war with Earth. They believe this will restore the Empire's honor." His blood went cold. The Unity Summit was the most important diplomatic event of the decade. Representatives from every major species would be there. Security would be tight, but not tight enough to stop a determined internal threat. Who leads this faction? Lord and his allies, at least 6 high-ranking nobles, possibly more. Lord, the same man who had called a pet, felt a cold anger building in her chest. "We should cancel your attendance," urged. "Stay here where we can protect you." "No," the word came out harder than she intended. "If I hide, they win. They prove that I am weak, that my marriage has broken me. I will not give them that satisfaction." "Then what do you suggest?" Thought for a long moment. Her eyes drifted to the window, where she could see the stars stretching endlessly into the darkness. Somewhere in her quarters was probably cooking breakfast and humming one of his strange Earth songs. Her gentle, helpless husband, the man who had somehow defeated 3 trained assassins through luck. "We go to the summit," she said slowly, "and we bring him." His eyes widened. "Bring the human, Commander, with respect, he would be a liability. He cannot fight, he cannot even." "He comes with us." His voice left no room for argument. "That is my decision." She did not know why she made this choice. Perhaps she wanted to protect by keeping him close. Perhaps she wanted to prove to the galaxy that she was not ashamed of her husband. Or perhaps, deep down, she wanted to see what would happen if real danger came. She wanted to know if she would see that dark, tired look in his eyes again. That night told about the summit. "It will be dangerous," she said. "There are people who want to hurt me. You could stay here where it is safe." Looked up from the Earth book he was reading. His expression was calm, unworried. "Where you go, I go," he said simply. "That is what husbands do. Even if it might kill you." He smiled that gentle smile, especially then. Did not understand him. She was not sure she ever would. But as she looked at her strange human husband, sitting peacefully in their quarters while enemies plotted her death, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope, small and fragile but real. Maybe she was not as alone as she had thought. The summit was 2 weeks away. Whatever secrets was hiding, she would find out soon enough. The Unity Summit was held on Prime, a massive space station that floated in neutral territory between the great empires. It was the largest diplomatic gathering in the galaxy, a place where enemies became friends and friends became enemies, all while drinking expensive wine and pretending to smile. Hated these events. She was a warrior, not a politician. But duty was duty, and so she walked through the grand halls of Prime with her head held high and murder in her heart. Walked beside her, dressed in formal human clothing that he had brought from Earth. It was simple compared to the elaborate robes of the nobles, but he wore it with quiet dignity. Every species they passed looked at him with curiosity, contempt, or both. The human pet of Commander, what a joke. Smiled at all of them. He bowed politely. He said nothing when a diplomat made a joke about humans being good only for simple labor. He simply nodded and moved on. Wanted to scream. She wanted to draw her blade and show everyone what happened to those who insulted her household. But she could not. Not here. Not now. You do not have to accept their insults, she whispered to him as they walked. Their words cannot hurt me, replied softly. Only my own actions can bring me shame. She did not understand human philosophy. She was not sure she wanted to. The first day of the summit passed without incident. Meetings, negotiations, endless talking kept her guard up, watching for any sign of Lord's plot. She saw the noble across the banquet hall several times, and each time he smiled at her with cold triumph in his eyes. He was planning something. She could feel it. Seemed unaware of the danger. He wandered through the summit like a curious child, asking questions about alien cultures and trying foods from different worlds. Several delegates actually seemed to enjoy talking to him. Humans, it turned out, were considered exotic and interesting by some species. Harmless, but amusing. If only they knew, thought. But knew what? She still did not have answers to her questions about her husband. The attack came on the second night, during the grand banquet. Had just finished a conversation with an ambassador when the lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on, red and dim. Then the explosion started. 3 bombs placed at strategic points around the banquet hall. The force of the blasts threw bodies across the room. Screams filled the air. Through the smoke and chaos, saw armed figures in black combat suits pouring through the doors. Dozens of them, maybe more. This was not a simple assassination. This was a massacre. Drew her plasma blade, the weapon that had killed hundreds of enemies across a dozen worlds. Her 4 guards formed up around her, but she could already see they were outnumbered. The attackers were well-trained, well-armed, and completely focused on one target. "Sorry." "Commander," one of her guards shouted, "we need to." He never finished the sentence. A plasma bolt caught him in the chest, and he fell. Fought, she cut down 2 attackers, then 3. Her blade sang through the air, leaving trails of burning light. But there were too many. Her remaining guards fell one by one. A blast grazed her shoulder, sending pain shooting through her arm. She stumbled. An attacker raised his weapon, aiming directly at her face. This was it. This was how she died. Not in glorious battle against a worthy enemy, but murdered at a diplomatic event by traitors and cowards. She closed her eyes. The shot never came. When she opened her eyes, the attacker was on the ground, his weapon arm bent at an impossible angle. Standing over him was... No, not the gentle, smiling man she knew. This was someone else entirely. He moved like nothing she had ever seen. Fast, precise, deadly. 2 more attackers rushed him, and he flowed between their strikes like water, breaking bones and dropping bodies with mechanical efficiency. He took a rifle from a fallen enemy and used it without hesitation, each shot finding its target with perfect accuracy. His face was empty. No fear, no anger, no gentle warmth, just cold, focused calculation. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice was different, flat, controlled, the voice of a man who had done this many times before. I started. Please, just one word, but it carried weight, authority, a command wrapped in a request. She stayed behind him. What followed was something would remember for the rest of her life. Her husband, her gentle and helpless husband, cut through the attackers like a blade through silk. He did not waste a single movement. Every strike, every shot, every step was calculated for maximum effect. When one attacker tried to flank them, threw a knife that had never seen before. It crossed 15 meters of chaotic battlefield and buried itself in the attacker's throat. 12 enemies fell in less than a minute. 12 trained killers, sent specifically to murder her, destroyed by a man who apologized when he overcooked rice. When it was over, stood in the center of the carnage, breathing slowly and evenly. He was covered in blood, none of it his own. The rifle in his hands was still smoking. Around them, the banquet hall was chaos. Other guests were screaming, running, calling for help. Station security was finally arriving, far too late to matter. In the distance, could hear Lord shouting orders, trying to maintain control of a situation that had spiraled far beyond his plans. Turned to look at her. For one brief moment she saw it again, that dark, tired thing behind his eyes, the weight of something terrible and old. Then, like a light switching off, it was gone. His shoulders relaxed. His expression softened. He looked down at his blood-covered hands and then back at her, and something like shame crossed his face. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was gentle again, concerned. Stared at him. Her shoulder was bleeding, her guards were dead. She had nearly died, and he was asking if she was hurt. "Who are you?" she whispered. Did not answer. He simply bent down and picked up a piece of cloth from a fallen attacker, using it to wipe the blood from his hands. His movements were slow now, tired. "We should find somewhere safe," he said quietly. "There may be more of them." There were not more of them. Later, would learn that had killed every single attacker who had entered the banquet hall. 23 in total, including the ones her guards had managed to take down before falling. 23 professional killers, eliminated by one man. One human. As station security led them to a secure room, walked beside her husband in complete silence. She had 1,000 questions. She had demands and accusations, and a burning need to understand what she had just witnessed. But she said nothing, because when she looked at, walking quietly beside her with blood drying on his formal clothes and exhaustion in his eyes, she did not see a liar or a spy or a secret weapon. She saw a man who had been hiding something terrible, and who had revealed it only to save her life. The truth could wait until they were safe, until they were alone, until she could look into his eyes and ask him the only question that mattered. "Who are you really?" The secure room was small and cold. Metal walls, no windows, a single door that locked from the inside. Station security had given them this space while they sorted out the chaos of the attack. They would be safe here, they promised. No one would disturb them. Did not care about safety, not anymore. She stood in the center of the room, her wounded shoulder wrapped in a temporary bandage, and watched her husband sit down heavily on a metal bench. Looked exhausted, not physically tired, but something deeper, like a man who had been carrying a weight for too long and had finally set it down. "Tell me," said, her voice was hard, demanding everything. Was silent for a long moment. He stared at his hands, the hands that had killed 23 people less than an hour ago. Then he looked up at her, and his eyes were the saddest she had ever seen. "Before the peace treaty," he said quietly, "I was something called a shadow operative. Had heard rumors about such people, ghost stories that intelligence officers told each other late at night. Earth's secret soldiers, trained from childhood to be perfect weapons. They did not officially exist. The Earth Confederacy, their very existence at every opportunity. I was recruited when I was 6 years old," continued. "They found me in an orphanage. I had certain abilities, pattern recognition, reaction speed, the capacity to remain calm in extreme situations. They trained me for 15 years, languages, combat, infiltration, assassination. By the time I was 21, I had completed 47 missions." His voice was flat, empty, like he was reading from a report about someone else's life. "What kind of missions?" asked. "The kind that never appeared in any official record. I killed warlords who threatened Earth's colonies. I destroyed terrorist cells before they could act. I removed political obstacles and eliminated threats that could not be handled through normal means." He paused. "I was very good at my job." Thought about the gentle man who made her breakfast every morning. The man who apologized too much and smiled at everyone and flinched at loud noises. "The flinching," she said slowly. "The clumsiness, it was all an act." Yes and no. His expression was complicated. The clumsiness was training, a technique to make people underestimate me. But the flinching, he looked away. "After 15 years of killing, I developed a reaction to violence. My body remembers things my mind tries to forget. Loud noises remind me of things I do not want to remember." "Then why continue? Why accept this marriage?" "Because they gave me a choice." For the first time, something like emotion entered his voice. When the peace treaty was being negotiated, the Confederacy needed to send someone to marry a high-ranking, someone who could protect them if necessary, but who could also remain invisible, who could pretend to be harmless. He smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I was the best choice, and in return, they promised me something I had wanted for years." "What?" "A chance to stop." His voice cracked slightly. "A chance to be something other than a weapon. They told me my new mission was simple: protect you, be your husband, make you happy if I could, and in return I could finally rest. I could finally be normal." Felt something shift inside her chest. All this time she had her husband. She had seen him as weak, as helpless, as something that needed protection. But the truth was far more complicated. "The assassins outside our quarters," she said, "3 months ago. I handled them." The intelligence leak that exposed Lord's conspiracy before it fully formed. "I traced it through the ship's communication systems. Quietly. I did not want anyone to know." "You have been protecting me this entire time, from the beginning." "Yes." His hands were shaking, not from fear, not from anger, from something else entirely. "Why?" she demanded. "Why pretend to be weak? Why let everyone mock you and insult you and treat you like nothing?" Finally looked at her directly. His eyes were dark and deep, filled with years of pain that she was only beginning to understand. "Because you did not need another weapon," he said softly. "The galaxy is full of warriors and killers and people who solve problems through violence. You are one of them, the strongest and most dangerous I have ever met." He paused. "But when I came aboard your ship, I saw something else. I saw a woman who was lonely, who had forgotten what it felt like to be cared for, who had built walls around her heart so thick that no one could reach her." Wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, but the words would not come. "I could have been your protector in the open," continued. "Standing beside you in armor, carrying weapons, showing the galaxy that your human husband was dangerous. But that is not what you needed. You needed someone to make you dinner, someone to learn your language and care about your happiness, someone who would be gentle with you, even when you did not know how to be gentle with yourself." He looked at his blood-stained hands again. "The other part of me, the weapon they created, I hoped you would never have to see it. I wanted to leave that person behind forever. I wanted to just be your husband." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I wanted to be just, not an operative, not a killer, just a man who loved his wife." The word hung in the air between them. Love. He had said it so simply, so quietly, like it was an obvious truth that required no explanation. "You love me," said. "Yes, I think I have since the first month. When you started leaving food on my plate because you noticed I was not eating enough. When you adjusted the temperature in our quarters because you realized I was always cold. When you threatened to kill Lord for insulting me, even though you thought I could not hear you." He smiled. "You are not as hard as you pretend to be, Commander. I saw the truth of you very quickly." Did not know what to say. She had spent her entire life building defenses, creating armor, becoming the iron blade that the Empire needed. And this man, this impossible human, had walked through all of it without even trying. She thought about the 4 months they had spent together, the quiet mornings, the strange earth food, the way he always seemed to know when she needed silence and when she needed conversation, the way he had held her hand during the long nights when old memories kept her awake. She thought about the look in his eyes when he killed those attackers, the cold efficiency, the terrible skill, and then immediately after the shame, the exhaustion, the desperate need to be seen as something more than a weapon. She understood now, she understood everything. Walked across the room and sat down beside her husband. He looked at her with uncertain eyes, as if expecting rejection or anger or disgust. Instead, she took his hand, gently, the way he had taught her to be gentle. "I am not angry," she said quietly. "You should be. I lied to you. You protected me in your own way." She paused, "and I think I understand why you did it." His eyes filled with something that might have been tears. "You do. You wanted to be seen as a person, not a weapon, not a tool." She squeezed his hand. "I know what that feels like, to be reduced to your function, to be the iron blade and nothing else." They sat together in silence for a long moment. Outside, they could hear the station coming back to life. Security teams moving, officials shouting orders, the machinery of politics grinding back into motion. But in this small room there was only the two of them, a warrior and a shadow, both broken in their own ways, both trying to find something worth living for. "What happens now?" asked. Thought about it. The galaxy would know what her husband really was. The secret was out. There would be consequences, questions, demands for explanation. But those were problems for tomorrow. Now, she said, "We rest together." Leaned his head against her shoulder and closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep, truly asleep, without nightmares or hidden tensions. Just a tired man finding peace in the presence of someone who finally understood him. Stayed awake, watching over him, protecting him the way he had protected her. For the first time in years, she did not feel alone. Word spread through the galaxy like fire. Within days, every major news network was telling the story of Commander and her human husband. The gentle man who had been mocked at diplomatic gatherings, the clumsy fool who could not walk across a room without tripping, the pathetic earth creature that Noble laughed about behind closed doors. That same man had killed 23 professional assassins in less than 2 minutes. The footage from the banquet hall security systems was leaked, despite all efforts to contain it. Billions of beings across the galaxy watched in stunned silence as a small human male destroyed trained killers with his bare hands. They watched him move like a ghost through the chaos, each movement perfect, each strike deadly. They watched him protect his alien wife without hesitation, without fear, without mercy. And then they watched him gently ask if she was hurt. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Intelligence agencies scrambled to understand what Earth had really been hiding. The Shadow Operative Program, which had been dismissed as human propaganda for decades, was suddenly very real and very terrifying. How many more humans like were out there? How many gentle, smiling people were secretly capable of destroying armies? No one knew, and that was perhaps the most frightening part. Lord and his co-conspirators were arrested within the week. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Under interrogation, several of them broke and confessed everything, including plans that went far beyond the assassination attempt. They had intended to restart the war with Earth, using death as justification. They had believed humans were weak, primitive, easily conquered. They had been very, very wrong. Stood before the Galactic Council 3 months later at her side. He was no longer pretending to be small. He stood straight, his eyes clear and calm, wearing the formal uniform of an officer, an honorary rank granted by the Empire in recognition of his actions. The ambassador, a large being with 4 arms and suspicious eyes, leaned forward in his seat. You sent us a weapon disguised as a gift, he accused, pointing at. Earth has been placing assassins in positions of power throughout the galaxy, hiding them behind peaceful marriages and diplomatic missions. This is an act of war. Said nothing, he simply waited. Stepped forward, her voice carrying across the great hall. No, she said firmly. Earth sent me a partner, a man who could have revealed himself at any time but chose to remain hidden because he wanted to protect not just me, but the peace we were all trying to build. She paused, letting her words sink in. The weapon was always optional, could have been nothing but a husband, nothing but a gentle presence in my life, and he would have been content with that forever. He only became a weapon again when he had no other choice. The council murmured among themselves. This was not the explanation they had expected. The question you should be asking, continued, is not why Earth hid their capabilities. The question is why they chose to hide them. Humans have had the power to infiltrate and destabilize every major government in the galaxy. They have had this power for decades, and yet they chose peace. They chose quiet protection. They chose to be gentle, even though they did not have to be. She looked at and he looked back at her. Something passed between them, understanding, love, partnership. That is not weakness, said. That is strength. The strength to choose kindness when violence would be easier. The strength to hide your power so that others do not feel threatened. The strength to be gentle even when you are capable of being terrible. The council was silent. A delegate, the same species that had mocked at the banquet months ago, slowly rose from his seat. You are saying, he said carefully, that humans have chosen to appear weak deliberately, as a gift to the rest of us, so that we would not fear them. Yes, said simply, and how did we repay that gift? With mockery, with contempt, with cruelty. Her voice hardened. My husband endured months of insults and humiliation because he believed that being gentle was more important than being respected. He let you laugh at him because he did not want you to be afraid. The delegate sat down slowly, his expression troubled. The session ended without resolution, but knew that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted forever. The other species had learned something important that day, something that would change how they viewed humanity from now on. Humans were not weak, they never had been. They simply chose when to show their strength. That night aboard their ship returning home, found in their quarters, he was cooking dinner, some Earth dish called kimchi stew, humming that same folk song he always hummed. The smell filled the room with warmth. You did well today, she said, sitting down at their small table. I did not do anything, replied. You were the one who spoke to the council. Only because you taught me what to say. She watched him move around the kitchen, his hands busy with familiar tasks. Do you miss it, being invisible? Considered the question for a long moment. He added something to the pot, stirred it carefully, then turned to look at her. Sometimes, he admitted, being invisible was simple. I knew exactly what I was supposed to do and who I was supposed to be. Now, he smiled. Now everything is more complicated. But I think I like this better. What is this? Walked over to where she was sitting and knelt down so their eyes were level. His expression was soft, open, completely without defense. Being known, he said quietly, by you, by the galaxy, being seen for what I really am and being accepted anyway. He reached out and took her hand. For most of my life I was a shadow, a weapon, something that existed only in darkness. Now I can stand in the light. Now I can be a person, not just a tool. Felt her throat tighten. She thought about the fierce commander she had been before came into her life. The iron blade. The woman who had forgotten how to feel anything but duty and anger. He had changed her. Slowly, gently, without ever demanding anything in return. He had reminded her what it meant to be soft, what it meant to be cared for, what it meant to love and be loved. She pulled him close and held him. The fierce commander of the Imperial fleet, holding her human husband in a tiny kitchen aboard a warship, surrounded by the endless darkness of space. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For being gentle with me, even when I did not deserve it." Laughed softly. "You always deserved it, you just did not believe it." They stayed like that for a long time, neither speaking. Outside their window, the stars burned cold and distant. The galaxy continued its endless turning, full of empires and conflicts and beings who would never understand what they had witnessed. But in this small room, there was only warmth. When the stew was ready, they sat down together and ate. Told her stories about his childhood on Earth, the real stories, not the sanitized version from his fake file. Told him about her first command, the mistakes she had made, the losses that still haunted her dreams. They talked until late in the night, learning each other all over again. Not as commander and cultural liaison, not as warrior and shadow operative, just as two people who had found something precious in each other, something worth protecting at any cost. In the morning, woke to find already making breakfast. He turned and smiled at her, that same gentle smile that had once infuriated her and now made her heart feel full. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied. And for the first time in her life, commander of the Imperial fleet understood what it meant to be home. Not a place, not a planet or a ship or a territory to be defended. Home was a person, a gentle, dangerous, impossible human who had walked into her life and taught her how to be soft again. Humanity was never weak. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to show the galaxy what they truly were. And what they were, now understood, was love. Fierce, irrational, unstoppable love. The most dangerous weapon of all.